Okay, ladies and gents, I think we are live. This is going to be a fairly quick stream today. We're going to talk about this new announcement by the Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak. What a weekend it has been. I think a lot of people woke up most of the people I'd say woke up this morning kind of shocked by this announcement that's come out about compulsory military service. So we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to give you my views on whether I think this will actually come to fruition, even though everyone's treating it as though it's a fact now and that this will happen. But what we've got to look at first of all is that, remember, Sunak gave a speech and he talked about how we're entering a period where the next 5 years will be the most volatile and high-risk period that the UK has been through in the last 100 years, or whatever he said exactly. But he said these next 5 years are going to be critical. There's going to be a lot of serious events occurring. So within days of that, obviously they already knew what the plan was. They put out this on Sunday, so just yesterday they put this out, that the new proposal is for teenagers, which I think is going to upset a lot of parents. The teenagers now will have to do military service in the UK. Now, if you read into it a little bit in more detail, like I have, I wanted to wait until I'd read into a lot of the proposals. It's still fairly loose. They're not putting out a lot of information on it. It actually shows you exactly what is being proposed, and we'll get into the legalities of it. We'll look at what happens if you don't go. If you're a teenager now and you don't go, we'll look at what that means as well. So I've pulled up a few articles for you and a few pieces of information. So we'll go over that now then. But yeah, this will be a fairly short stream. It won't be a long one. I don't typically stream on a Monday, but we need to talk about this. So here it is then. Conscription, firstly, what is that? And this is where it's going to be slightly different. We're going to talk about national service and conscription. So conscription is the mandatory legal obligation to serve in the country's military. And remember, whenever you see the word legal, that is based on a law that is passed. It's like during COVID, things became illegal, or new things were legal as a result of politicians passing those things. So after completion of the military service, the person becomes a reserve. So a reservist. This is the crucial thing that I don't think a lot of people realize. After you complete, or after the teenager completes the 12-month military service, they then become a reservist to be called upon in a state of war or emergency. Now, this is the first thing I want to talk about, because I served from 17 years old, as many of you know. I served from 17 until, what age was I when I did over 10 years anyway in the army. So I think I was just over 27, 28 years old when I finished. Now, maybe because I was pretty stupid when I joined, I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into in regards to the reserve list. So this is really important. Again, I don't think a lot of people realize this. But when you join at that age, and there's a whole business plan behind this, you actually, the Army or the Air Force, Navy, whoever, the services, they invest a lot of money into the training of each soldier. It's a huge amount of money that they invest into you: time, effort, resources, etc. So even if you do, when I was in, it was 4 years minimum service that you had to do. Even if you just do those 4 years, I didn't realize, 17 when I joined, not very smart, let me just say, I didn't realize that I was then on the reserve list until I was 40 years old. That's just something I didn't realize. So one thing I think they're not talking about, and obviously most people, most parents won't know this, is that even when the kid, the teenager, as they keep using the word, does their military service for 1 year, they will actually be on the reserve list. They'll become a reservist, and I was looking at the criteria, and the reservist it's pretty much indefinite until And you can even say, well, it's till you're 40 years old. It's actually not. I've pulled it up and I want to show you this. There isn't really a limit. It says 51 years in one place. It says during World War II, it was 60 years old. So you're kind of stuck with this forever once you've completed the military service. This is really, really quite crucial, actually. So typically, mandatory enlistment in the armed forces applies to men after they turn 18, with women having the ability to volunteer. Okay, don't rely on this, ladies watching this. Do not rely on this time around, because remember the agenda that's been pushed through. Men and women are biologically the same. A woman's body is just as strong as a man's body, etc. It's not true. In fact, I can tell you why it's not true. If that were true, in the military, this strength and fitness test would be the same. It's not. Men have to do X amount of press-ups or push-ups. Women have to do a lot lower. I think when I was in, it was something like 50, 55. Obviously, I could do a lot more than that because I was, pretty fit and strong. But for women, I think it was like 21. So it was 55, let's say, versus 21. Same with the pull-ups. It was X amount. And the running, 1.5 mile run, you had whatever it was to complete it. I did mine I think it was about 7 minutes on average. I used to run my 1.5 mile. But for a lady, it was way, way more than that. I don't even remember what it was, 12, 13 minutes or something like that. It was a lot longer. So if that is true, what the whole media and the agenda says, men and women's bodies are exactly the same. That's why the whole trans issue and everything else going on. If that were true, why does the military not put those same rules on the fitness test? It's because you can't. Men and women's bodies are not physically the same. So that's the first thing to take into account. However, I think they're going to treat them exactly the same when it comes to this new ruling. There are exceptions such as Norway, they said, where both men and women are expected to serve on par with each other to promote equality. Really, to promote equality. I think, you think about what they're saying here. Do you really think women want that sort of equality? I mean, I don't know. If you're a lady, please drop it in the comments. I think the whole movement of equality was to do with wages and other things in society. I don't think it was that they could, go on the front line like the men. I mean, I don't know. If you're a lady or if you've got a teenage daughter, please let me know. By the way, can you hear that? That is the Isle of Man TT has just started the racing, and it's just down there. And this is a soundproof studio. So if you're hearing these bikes, there's no way to filter it out. This is soundproof, and you can still hear it. So this is known as the draft in the USA. The UK compulsory enlistment in the armed forces was called national service. So it actually ended in 1960. However, those that had deferred their service, so if you're thinking, well, I'm going to defer my service because of education or career reasons, they still had to complete their service. And the last conscript in the UK was discharged in 1963. So they actually abolished national service more than 60 years ago now. And out of the 44 countries, now we've got a helicopter over my house, goodness me. In the geographical continent of Europe, 15 still have conscription. So they've got all the different countries that have conscription. So Russia, they've got an example of here. And in Russia, it's 18 to 27. So this is the age group they have for Russia. And they say here, it's not a fun ride, no matter where you find yourself serving in your country. But being a real man is being able to take the pain and hardship. This experience will make your further civilian life so much easier. So I just want to talk about that a second as well. Because the reason, I think most of you know this, I've talked about it in my courses a lot as well. The reason I joined the army is because I didn't really have a lot going for me. I was not an intelligent kid, let me just say that. I wasn't good at school or anything like that, study. I used to love doing my own research, which is, I guess, how I've got this YouTube channel here. I used to love doing my own research, doing things and studying stuff that I was interested in, but I just wasn't interested in the typical school route. So these motorbikes are distracting me so badly. But my point with that is I had to join. There was nothing else I was going to do. I was going to go straight into a minimum wage factory job or something like that. There was nothing else I could do. And then for me, the military did help me out. So that's why I'm in two schools of thought around this. One is that the military really helped me, built discipline, courage, commitment, persistence, integrity. It built all these values that I hold dear today, and I think that have made me successful. I really do. But if I were intelligent, I was really clever at school, and I was going to go on to do something really good in the world, maybe I was destined for the top universities, etc., would that be something that I would want to be told I have to do this? It's a compulsory action. I have to do this for 12 months. Maybe not. I don't know if it's right for every single person. And the other thing I think is the most worrying is that we know where this is heading towards. It's heading towards conflict. Once you've done that national service and you're trained, that investment is in you. They're not going to let people go. If they call people up, people are going to have to go. So these are my concerns around it. Now, what happens then if people were to dodge the draft? Well, in Russia, it's punishable by up to 2 years in prison. The Netherlands also has it. However, it's not enforced. After turning 17, a conscript receives a letter from the MOD, but there's no obligation to show up. Austria also has it. Belarus has it. Switzerland has it as well, so from the age of 19. Okay, so we can see Denmark, Estonia, a lot of these countries, though, they do border with Russia or very close to Finland, Norway, etc. So we can kind of understand why some of these countries have it. But UK then, why exactly has UK got this? And why is Sunak's plan to make 18-year-olds do national service? Well, I think it's mainly political. That's what I think this is. And it's, of course, assuming that they actually win the next elections. So the Tory party. Will they actually win the next elections, though? I would be quite surprised. I don't like either party, Labour or the Conservatives. So, I don't have any bias here. So do I think that they will win the next election? Not really. I actually don't. Do I think it will be better under Labour? No, I think they're both as bad as one another. So I think it's going to be bad either way. But I think personally this is a political move. They know they're so far behind Labour, the other party. If you're not from the UK, your two main parties are Conservative Party and your Labour Party. So there's your two. I think they know they're so far behind that they need to do something to catch up. And I think this is their plan. So it's more of a political move. Maybe they're hoping that some of the older voters will say, oh, these younger generations, they're so weak, and we need to get them back into this military service. There's too many gangs and there's too many, these hoodlums hanging around, etc. So I think that's probably where this is actually going. I think it's more political. Now let's see what else. So what does the BBC say? How is this going to work? Well, it's a plan to require 18-year-olds to take part if they win the election in 1 month's time. Now, there's another option. I think this is important we talk about this. There is another option. There is either the military training option we just talked about, or there's the community volunteering option. So this is spending 1 weekend every month or 25 days over a year volunteering with the National Health Service, Fire Service, Ambulance, Search and Rescue, and critical local infrastructure. So there is another option. It isn't just the military service. If I had the choice and I was quite intelligent, I didn't want to do the military stuff, I would do this instead, and I would volunteer with search and rescue. If I had my time over again, I'd probably do, and I was actually clever at that age, I would have done the search and rescue, because that's a really exciting sort of role without putting you on the front line. Or the fire service, that would be another one I'd be really, each person's different, but these are the ones that I would be interested in. So what would be the punishments then for not taking part? Well, they've said no one will go to prison. So that's good. That's a great thing. No one would go to prison. But there would be non-criminal sanctions. They love this word at the minute, sanctions. Oh gosh. I don't know what that means exactly, non-criminal sanctions. And the online law book isn't clear either. So that's what they're looking at. The vast majority would, though, do community volunteering or unpaid work. And they wouldn't have a choice by the sound of it. And this was the other thing I know, because I know people will ask this question. What if you live overseas? What if you're a UK citizen living overseas? Well, they haven't actually said whether you would have to come back in order to complete national service. But we do have precedents from the past. And those precedents were, you can look at Vietnam War or other wars, World War II, etc. Sometimes people had received letters if they're in university overseas, or they were, and it depended on the reason, but they would receive letters saying they had to come back, and you can actually appeal that. So there was an appeal process in each country. So at least you know it isn't super strict, and that it could be appealed if this comes about. So I wanted to go on to the UK Parliament, so actually get it from the horse's mouth, as it were. And I wanted to look at the last time this was quite heavy. So this is the conscription of the Second World War. Now we'll use this as a precedent because it tells us what might happen in the future, in the very near future. So what happened then? There was limited conscription previously. Plans for limited conscription applying to single men were between 20 and 22. So this was the pre-war era, 1939. And this was the parliamentary approval of the Military Training Act of May 1939. This required men to undertake 6 months, not 12 months, but 6 months of military training, and 250,000 people registered for it. But then very shortly afterwards, again, where are we now? We're in May of 2024. This was May 39. What happened in September of 39? On the day Britain declared war on Germany, 3rd of September 39, Parliament immediately, keyword, passed a more wide-reaching measure. The National Service Armed Forces Act imposed conscription on all males between 18 and 41, so this was the age range, who had to register for service. Those medically unfit were exempted. So there's another key one. If you have some medical issues, then you would have to go through a tribunal or a board, or you'd have to go in front of some doctors, etc. But you could be medically exempted. Also key industries, so it was baking, obviously food, farming, that is food as well, medicine and engineering. So these were the sort of categories or jobs that were exempt. Conscientious objectors had to appear before a tribunal to argue their reasons. So that's also another option. Now, conscription of women. Did you know this? A lot of people, I think, don't. In December 41, Parliament passed a second National Service Act. It widened the scope of conscription still further by making all unmarried women and all childless widows between the ages of 20 and 30 liable to call up. See, I knew that there were women involved, but I didn't know this here. I didn't know it was exactly like that. Men were now required to do some form of national service up to the age of 60 years old. Okay, 60 years old. Again, I think a lot of people aren't aware of this, that there was that form of service that men had to do up to 60 years old, but also the aspect of women in World War II. And I remember I did a tour many years ago of a bomb factory, and I was really surprised to hear, I mean, this was a long time ago now, that the bomb factories in England were all manned by women. So actually it was the women that made all of the bombs and the munition and all these very detailed processes. It was a fascinating tour if you're into that kind of stuff. I like my history, as you know, and I thought it was just fascinating how it was the first time that women had actually stepped into a role like that, and they really excelled at it, and making all these bombs, and they've added all these new processes and health and safety measures, because there was one factory that blew up because I think someone lit a cigarette or something like that. Gunpowder around, not a good mix. But it was quite interesting, quite fascinating actually. So what does his plan mean then? Well, there's two distinctions we have to make. There's national service and there's conscription. Conscription means people are forced to join, so they don't have a choice. Although, just remember, in life we always have a choice, even if the choices aren't good. British 18-year-olds would be compelled, though. This is national service. Compelled. So it's a different word. It's a softer word, to volunteer in the community or enter a 12-month placement in the armed forces. Would there be punishments for refusing? Well, teenagers would not be sent to prison for refusing to comply, is what they are saying. So no, that isn't exactly how it would go. I wanted to bring up then which countries actually have conscription or military service right now. And we have then, yes, which is Russia, we have here Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Kyrgyzstan. So we have all these countries in the Middle East here, Tajikistan, Belarus, Ukraine, etc., Lithuania. So we have a lot of compulsory now, yes. We talked about these: Finland, Sweden, Norway. But now, if you look at the red, this is the no. So this is the United Kingdom, the Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Netherlands. But you look at the pattern of this, you look at the color scheme, and what do you notice? You've got Russia here, and then you've got the blue, which are the bordering countries with Russia. So I think that's quite telling, actually. And then the purple is de jure, or de jure, depending on where you are in the world. De jure is the sort of Latin. It's from the 1600s, the origin of the word. It's all about something that exists, but is not, how can we say? It exists as a ruling, but it's not a part of the law. So in theory, yes, they could call up people in the US, but it's not. It would have to pass the either Senate or Congress. So it exists, but it's not enforced, I think is the best way to say it. And that's, we also have China as well, has that. We also have Poland and a couple of other Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia have this as well. So I hope you found that fascinating and interesting. I definitely enjoyed just going through and doing the research on that to find out, A, what exactly does this mean, and B, how likely is it to actually happen, and then C, if it were to happen and there was the enlistment, what is likely to happen next? Is it just going to be a blanket, you have to do it, you'll go to prison, etc., etc.? No, but if you look at what happened during World War II, I would just model that as the plan as to what will happen, because if it's happened previously, yeah, it's a different time period, things have changed slightly, but I think it would model that in quite a similar way if it were to happen again. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I will see you next time. Take care. God bless.